This podcast episode will show you how you can apply both translation keys and rotation keys on an individual part to give you the desired motion path that might be a little more complex than just a single translation or a single rotation. The goal of this episode is to show you how to take this particular bolt and make it rotate and translate at the same time to give you the effect of the bolt unscrewing itself from its position. First, creating the rotational keys is easy. You simply select the bolt, select the axis of rotation, and enter in the desired number of degrees. And Composer will create the keys that will represent this rotation, and you will get the effect of the bolt spinning in place. Now, to add the translation key, you might think that you would select the bolt and simply translate it out. But if you did it this way, the result will be that the bolt will spin in place, and not until the last two keys will you get that translation. So the question is, why is that happening? And also, how can you get the motion path that you want? So the question as to why this is happening is very logical, and that is due to the keyframing engine here of the timeline. Between this first key, at time equals 0, where it's at initial position, and the next key, we are only tracking the rotation of the bolt. And the next two keys are only tracking the rotation. So the system is only going to do the rotation. And not until the very end, where I have a rotation and a translation combined, will I get the bolt to actually move. So how can you get the bolt to move from time equals 0 seconds? It's a very easy thing to do, and it will use the technique in Composer of animating an assembly. When you animate an assembly motion, all of the parts in the assembly will inherit that motion path, which makes sense because if you're moving an assembly, you want all the parts in the assembly to move together. But if any of those parts in the assembly are moving at the same time or have their own motion keys, then you will have a compound effect. So imagine a car moving as the assembly, and now I have a glove box opening and closing as the car is moving. You are getting that complex motion path in this compound building of the keys. So the way you can do this for this particular case is creating a dummy assembly, call it translate, put the bolt in that dummy assembly, and now you have the keys for the bolt which will have it spin in place. And using your Alt key, you can select the subassembly. You can put the pivot here in the center of that subassembly, and then you can create that translation. If you filter the keys for the subassembly, you see that you have a key at time equals 0, which is the initial position, and a key at time equals 5, which is the translated position that you've created. So now essentially you have an assembly just sliding out along the axis. And when you compound the fact that the bolt is turning, you're going to get the result of this bolt unscrewing itself. So using the ability of Composer to animate both assemblies and parts at the same time, you can create very simple animation paths and have them combined to create a very interesting or more complex motion path.